Hi, this is Jeff Richards, Columbus, Ohio. You're listening to Barbecue Central.
Start the game! Let's go!
We'll do it live. Okay. Well, do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
So to get that perfect barbecue, you use wood. Are you sure it's safe? Whatever. We put the lighter fluid on, strike the match, and... Oh! Should we call the fire department? That might be a good idea.
Good evening and welcome to the Really Big Barbecue Central Show. This is a show that talks about all things important in the world of barbecue and grilling, originating from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame city of Cleveland, Ohio, the barbecue capital of the North Coast. I am your program host, Greg Rempe. Happy to have you aboard here on your Tuesday evening live fire fun and frivolity show. If you want to jump in on the show tonight via phone call or email, I welcome you to do one, both, or neither. Just lay out and listen to the show's entertainment and education value as it rolls. But here's how you do it.
You can get in touch with the show by calling 216-220-0966. Email Greg at the BBQCentralShow.com. On the Twitter and Instagrams at BBQ Central Show.
Everything else you want to find out about the show can be found at the main website, thebbqcentralshow.com. And here's what's happening coming up in about 13 minutes from now. It is the second Tuesday of the month of a new year, and 2021 is rapidly coming to a close. We get our first visit of Meathead from AmazingRibs.com. We have some breaking news that we'll be discussing here. Somewhat off the top, we will also be getting an update that we might get now monthly updates from. As you would recall, a couple months ago, Meathead unveiled here on the show that he was getting into the rub and barbecue sauce business. And I said, why would you get into the rub and barbecue sauce business? 10 years ago, I could see it, but there are a lot of barbecue rubs. There are a lot of barbecue sauces, the likes you've never seen, even on grocery shelves. Before, there was just a very small portion of an aisle. Mine is where the bread is for some reason. But now the whole opposite side of the aisle of bread is nothing but barbecue and grilling stuff and marinades and all that. So we'll see what Meathead has to report as far as updates are concerned. At last count, I believe he was doing 2 or 3 rubs and perhaps a couple different sauces. So we'll see what stayed the same, what's changed, and how that whole process is going along. We'll also talk about couch gating and some other things as well. So if you have a question for Meathead and you would like to jump in over the phone, you're more than welcome to do that. 216-220-0966. Or you can send us an email or social media request, and we'll go ahead and answer those as well. And that's Meathead in the first hour. Then we'll move into the second hour. And we have a first-time guest, a newest sponsor of the show. I mentioned them last week for the first time. It's a company called Vortic Watches, or Vortic Watch Company. And one of the co-founders, R.T. Custer, will be joining me. So while the show is usually about barbecue and grilling, sometimes we will diverge. And one of my other favorite pastimes, besides barbecue and grilling, is watches. And I wouldn't say I have any type of real extensive collection. I don't have Rolexes and JLCs by the boatloads or anything like this, but I can appreciate a good watch. And I have started to become a little bit more of a student of the watch game and learning about all the manufacturers and the conglomerates that are owning a bunch of the more well-known, let's call it mid-level to high-end / luxury watch companies. And then there's a whole other thing that we're going to learn about with RT. And I don't know if a lot of people are aware, or maybe if you are aware, you're well advanced in years, but the United States was quite a watch manufacturer back in the day, except they weren't watches that lived on your wrist like this. They were ones that went into your vest pocket, or they called pocket watches back then. So we'll learn a little bit about the history of American watches. We'll talk about how RT got into his particular watchmaking business, where they are pretty much preserving pieces of American history and transforming them from how they would have normally lived 80, 90, 100 years ago on a pocket watch type setting into a wristwatch, what they manufacture there in Colorado and what they source, whole bunch of good stuff. Plenty of weeds that I could go into that I'm going to try and reserve so I don't bore everybody to death. But typically, if it's interesting to me, that's all I care about and I'll talk about. But I'm going to try and temper the first round of interviews here so at least we get a good high-level education of what's going on from a watch perspective. And then maybe if you're interested, you check out the website and go from there. Vortic Watches RT Custer at 1014. And then we will close out the show this evening with something I have never done on the show, something I had never even thought of having to do on the show. It has to do with a Barbecue Central Show guest Hall of Fame and the banning of a current Barbecue Central Show guest Hall of Famer. In fact, as we look back on all of the inductees since 2018, this would be a member from the inaugural class of 2018 when we originally rolled it out. And it's something that I've thought long and hard about and something I am convicted about. So I'm going to share that with you and my reasoning behind it. And then, of course, I will always ask for your feedback through email over the course of the week. Or I guess you could react to it instantly if you're watching here live tonight. But certainly welcome your reaction as always. So that's how the show's setting up this evening. Meathead coming up here shortly. RT Custer from Vortic Watches. And then a banning of a Barbecue Central Show guest Hall of Famer. Don't forget, you can follow me socially. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Snappy Chat at BBQ Central Show. Facebook and Twitter /BBQ Central Show. And a video simulcast as well on YouTube /RD Rempe. So I have a new lineup announcement that will be starting the third Tuesday of the month. So that's actually going to be next week. Although the lineup that I have compiled for the third Tuesday of the month going through the first quarter of the year, potentially through the rest of the year as a trial, is going to be a little different. So normal third Tuesday of the month regular guest Steven Reichlin remains in his usual 914 spot. But the 1014 spot, I'm going to try something a little different. We're going to shake it up a little bit. And I'm doing what is called quarterly guests. And I have locked in the last one today. I spent the better part of a week and a half to 2 weeks trying to get all this stuff locked in together. So I had something to unveil to you on a Tuesday once I had everything all set up, and that happened over the weekend. Actually, the last one just confirmed about 4 or 5 hours ago. So this is what it's going to look like, aside from next week, because the third Tuesday was already upon us by the time everything got locked down, and I had already filled the first third Tuesday of a month. And quarters, it's 3 months, and every quarter, 4 quarters here in the calendar year. So it's not going to be this month, but starting in April, then again in July, then again in October. You know her from owning the business Hardcore Carnivore. Jess Pryles will be a recurring quarterly guest on the show. Then February, and then again in May, and then again in August, and then again in November. You've seen her on TV a bunch of times, whether she's a contestant or a judge, and you know her mostly through her dynamic social media presence of Hey Grill Hey. Susie Bullock will also be a recurring quarterly guest, and perhaps her husband Todd, who I have an affinity for. And then March and June and September and December, closing out 2021. I'm saying December now, but believe me, it's going to be here before you know it, because as I said before, 2021 is rapidly coming to a close. And this is somebody that I have tried to get quarterly for like the last 2 years, and it has totally been my fault for not booking. Daniel Vaughn from Texas Monthly has agreed to a regular quarterly visit as well. So changing up that third Tuesday of the month at 10:14, we now have 3 quarterly guests that will be recurring: Jess Pryles, Susie Bullock, and Daniel Vaughn. So looking forward to all of that fun stuff. And some really good, unique, and different opinions all the way through that list of 3. So Looking forward to starting that off in February with Susie. Then we'll go Daniel, and then it'll be full on with Jess Pryl starting in April. Listener feedback from Steve that says, sorry, Greg, I'm a little behind, but heard your show the other night through podcast with the embedded correspondence about your favorite shows of 2020. Mine is the episode on October 20th, the origin story of Steven Reichland. I enjoyed most of your origin stories, really like Steven's and Sam's and Meathead's and Malcolm's. Rusty was very interesting too. I didn't really care for Doug or Derek's. And I know Doug has been with you for a long time, but there's something about him that just rubs me the wrong way. Really? One was an episode where you all were talking about competitions and he kept referring to the general public as buzzards, or maybe it was vultures, something like that. You and Rusty, who also competes, said something to him about that. Enough ranting. Saw your stats on Instagram, and I will say I am not looking for a mask. I listen to a boatload of barbecue podcasts, and yours by far is the best. Thank you, Steve, for writing it. Meathead is in the green room, and he is ready to launch when we come back. I'll talk to you quickly about the gang over at Big Papa Smokers, Sterling Ball, and all those fine folks over there on the West Coast. Sterling has curated everything on that website himself. He's had input. He's had a hand in selecting or recommending. He's got those great seasonings and rubs like Sweet Money, Cattle Prod, Cash Cow, Sweet Money, and regular. I just said Sweet Money. Yeah, regular money. Also, aside from Sweet Money. Hallelujah, Desert Gold, Double Secret Steak Rub, all ones that I use on a regular basis. If you're looking to improve the flavor of your competition barbecue, you know you can't go wrong with the stuff that Big Papa Smokers is providing. Aside from that, he's the owner of Granny's Barbecue Sauce as well. So if you're looking for a new go-to sauce that will please everyone, why not give Granny's a try? Also, he's selling cookers. That's right. Some of the best pellet cookers and charcoal cookers out there on the market today. How about that Mac 2-Star General Pellet Grill? Big Papa Smokers, the exclusive Mac dealer, even offering special packages. Not a fan of pellet smokers? Try the old Hickory Ace BP. Why not? It's the only charcoal cooker that Big Papa trusts on his competition trailer. If you're not sure of what grill you need, how about this? Pick up the phone. A lot of people don't do that anymore. But pick up the phone and call and ask questions. They're there to answer your questions. 877-828-0727. That's 877-828-0727. Or shop their website at bigpapasmokers.com. That's BIGPOPPA smokers.com. And tell them the Barbecue Central show sent you. Maybe they'll send you an extra free gift. Who knows? All right, we have Meathead locked and loaded. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the #1 most downloaded barbecue and grilling podcast anywhere. The Barbecue Central Show. Broadcasting live from the Barbecue Central Show studios in Cleveland, Ohio. You're listening to the Barbecue Central Show. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
Hey, this portion of the show being brought to you by the Barbecue Guru, creators of automatic pit temperature control technology, sellers of ceramic cookers with built-in power draft fans, and accessories to make your barbecue and grilling life easier. Visit bbqguru.com for more information or call them at 800-288-GURU. The Barbecue Guru continues to be a breakthrough in barbecue technology. I gotta get here. What'd I do with it? Oh, here it is. You know what happens when it's the second Tuesday of the month? We get a little taster here of one of the most dynamic and cool theme songs that are sweeping the nation. Of course, that is coming from Meathead from AmazingRibs.com. Hey, Meathead.
Hello, Greg, and hello, Centralites. Good to see you again. How's them Browns doing?
Well, the Browns are in the playoffs. I don't know if anybody knew that or not, but we're quite a dynamic football team, and I lost quite a hefty full packer Wagyu brisket bet to a writer over at The Athletic earlier in the year when I had the Browns marked for no more than 5 wins this season. And he quickly took that bet, and then at win number 6, I called my pal Kevin Green over at the butcher shop and shelled out $100+ for that Wagyu brisket, which Andy proceeded to cook pretty much directly and sang all of its praises. So I think, the good news is we have a new customer for the butcher shop. The bad news is that one did hit the pocketbook. And I guess shame on me for not buying in like every Browns fan has ever done for years and years since '99 of decades of just tragic football. And I thought, hey, I can pass. What do they say? Past performance is not indicative of future results. Well, when you eat poop sandwiches, meathead, since 1999, a man can only eat so much poop. So I said, and I thought 5 was pretty fair. I mean, it's not like 0 or 1 like we have pulled off very recently. 5 was pretty okay. I would have been all right with that, but no. And so a brisket it cost me, but now we are into the second round of the playoffs to play the Chiefs.
Deep in the playoffs.
Yes, and I think I was listening to some pretty knowledgeable national football people, and they are making somewhat of a case for the Browns having a legitimate shot at taking down the Chiefs next weekend.
No.
I'm just telling you what they said. The last 7 games, they were wins. Some of them were against some pretty bad teams. 2-point wins, 4-point wins, nothing more than a 6 or 7-point win. And the Browns don't have a problem putting points on the board, but it's the keeping the points off the board that has been an Achilles heel. But geez, COVID has been really decimating the Browns like a lot of other teams. So who knows what team we have even showing up on the roster week to week. It's ever changing.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I got a confession to make. I'm a closeted Browns fan. When I was in high
They're
school,
all coming out now.
Yeah, I was in high school. Brian Sipe used to write a weekly column in the newspaper. Brian Sipe was a quarterback, the Cardiac Kids.
Red Right 88.
And he wrote a weekly column, which was sort of technical about football. And I was a high school football player. And I found it fascinating. And, of course, even before that, Jim Brown was just very special to watch. And I'm old enough to have watched him. I lived in Florida until my mid-20s, and then I moved to Chicago. And so I'm now a hopeless Bears fan.
Yep.
Bears have taken the place of the Browns.
Well, I mean, you were in the wild card game at least. The lack of quarterback isn't that great. But what can I tell? By the way, Meathead, I don't want you to sell yourself short on your football prowess. Dare I say, if you weren't familiar, this is Paper Gator we're talking to right here.
Oh, you
Paper
know that
Gator.
Story.
That's right. Yes. It was you had a huge stat line.
Very short version is I was the sports editor of the University of Florida campus paper, the Florida Alligator, and I somehow talked the head coach in the Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah,
both college and professional. He was 6'7", I was 5'9", 5'8", and he used to rest his elbow on my helmet. And I got some good stories out of that. Wrote some good articles, including the very last play of the game. I had been practicing as safety the whole game. They put me in at linebacker and ran right at me. I dove for the center's ankles just to protect myself, and the running back tripped over me for a 1-yard loss. So my record as a linebacker in the swamp is 1 tackle for a 1-yard loss.
Look at that guy. Where's that professional contract? We're still waiting for that. Meathead, let me ask you something, because I just read this coming into the show here. It wasn't the piece that you had sent me about some breaking Weber news that we'll cover here in just a second, and your thoughts on that. But and forgive me if I'm saying this gentleman's name wrong, but is it Phil Vettel? Phil Vettel retires from the Chicago Tribune after 41 years of being the dining critic. Vittel, yes.
Vittel.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, so he retires just recently, and I was wondering if you had any interaction with him and how much of a presence back in the day that kind of a position held.
He's been the restaurant critic for our paper for many, many years. Was anonymous for many, many years. A couple of years ago, it became impossible for him to remain anonymous, so he, like some other restaurant critics, allowed his identity to be seen. But we just as traumatic as we just lost Blair Kamen, who was the Pulitzer Prize-winning architecture critic at the Chicago Tribune. This was once a great paper. You know, I wrote for them back in the 80s, I think so. I did 3-year gig as their wine critic. And, you know, the paper was a real broadsheet. It was much bigger than it is today. It was one of the great American papers, along with the New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, San Francisco Chronicle, Cleveland Plain Dealer. And, you know, so many of them have gone downhill. There's a few that are still thriving. The New York Times is still doing remarkably well. But you know, it's just really hard for these papers to maintain quality people and pay them what they should pay them. So the restaurant critic, who's been there for many years, and the architecture critic, both stepping down. Just another nibble at the foundation of the Fifth Estate, the credible media, the people, the reporters, the journalists who know how to research and gather facts and report them properly.
Meathead from AmazingRibs.com joining us here on the show. So you had sent me a link moments before we jumped on the air, and it was breaking news, and the headline reads, Weber buys smart oven company, June. I've never heard of June. June will continue to develop new ovens and accessories, but I'm anxious to hear why Weber would have acquired a smart oven company. A startup.
June is the company that Weber partnered with to build the software for their SmokeFire. The SmokeFire is Weber's first pellet smoker that came out about a year ago with a great deal of controversy, and you and I have discussed it. A major feature of it was an app that Weber had built as really cutting edge. And unfortunately, when they introduced the machine, the app wasn't quite ready, and it's been slowly upgrading. And Weber has gone from a foundry, if you will, an equipment manufacturer,
hardware,
to being a software company. And so they partnered with this company, June. I think they're in San Francisco. And June had expertise in app development and particularly in predictive analogs and such for cooking. And they were working on this oven. There's several of these new combi ovens coming on the market, and they're going to be very interesting. These the new combi ovens, there are right now they're countertop ovens, but they'll eventually become built-in. But they have convection oven, regular heating. They have cameras built in so that they can look at the color of the meat, and they can, you know, watch the color of your bark. They can sense temperature in and around, and they have all manner of timers and probes. You can insert probes, predictive technology. You can look at it and it'll say your roast will be done at 5:34, that sort of thing. And many of them, the combi oven is also, they control humidity. And barbecue people know something about this, but not enough. And that is the humidity inside an oven. And a barbecue pit or a grill is just an oven with a lousy thermostat. But humidity inside that oven can really control a lot of things about the heating properties of the food, as well as the moisture content of the food. Anova, the sous vide company, they make the Anova sous vide device. They have a new one that's pretty far along, and it's coming on the market. I think it's already on the market at anova.com. You can check them out. I think we're going to see more of these. And June is working on one. I don't know if they've delivered it yet, but their software is the software that's inside the app for Weber. And I think Weber just decided, if we're going to roll the dice on app-driven cookers, we ought to own the software, and we ought to own the company that wrote the software. I don't know if they bought them for the oven as much as for the software, although the oven is an interesting product, and Weber is in the cooking business, so why not have a high-tech oven that works on the same app as their smoke fire? So once you use the app for one, you can use it for the other. It makes perfect sense, and there's some synergy there. I had a conversation with Kevin Coleman, their executive chef, the other day. He was a guest on the Pitmaster Club happy hour. We had a little 2-hour conversation webinar the other day on cold weather cooking, and Kevin was one of our guests. And I got onto one of my favorite topics. You've heard me mention this. We now have pellet grills, smokers that are thermostat controlled. You set it, forget it. You can even program a sequence of temperatures and a taper off and all kinds of fun stuff. And you have thermostat controls for charcoal grills now. And that's going to dovetail into the next topic we're going to take up. But why can't we have a thermostat for a gas grill?
Why?
A few years ago, my GE oven thermostat died. Went online and I found a replacement part for $30. And I installed it myself. It wasn't hard. And I'm not mechanically inclined. Why can't we put a $30 addition onto a gas grill and be able to set it for $225 and walk away? This, I think, would appeal to a lot of people, particularly people who are accustomed to indoor cooking. And outdoor cooking is so hard to so hard to do. So he kind of chuckled and said, maybe something will happen, which caught me off guard. I didn't expect to hear that. So maybe Weber's got a thermostat gas grill in the pipeline.
Do you have any speculation on why we haven't seen anything like that in a gas grill?
It's complicated. It's complicated because you've got 4 burners. In your indoor oven, you've got 1 burner. So you can set a thermostat and you've got just 1 box, and you're not dealing with 2-zone cooking. You're not trying to sear in an oven. Warm air, this is a topic that I can ramble on for hours. You can't sear in an oven. And, I hear from people with Kamados all the time. Oh, my Kamado goes up to 600 degrees. Good. That's wonderful. You can't sear for shit. You need infrared radiation to sear. You need glowing coals, flame, to sear. So there are. It's more complicated on a grill than it is an oven.
So, I mean, in essence, you would need a grill where the burners would be turning off and coming back on, just like you would in an oven, and that's just not technology that's in any of these grills at this point.
I don't think it's insurmountable. I've not really put my pen to paper and tried to design it myself because that's not something I'm skilled at. But I'm sure that the people, perhaps at June, can do this. They can develop a technique that will turn burner 1 on and burner 2 off and burner 2 to low and then to medium, and they can keep the heat in the indirect zone and what you want it, and that.
So is this
shouldn't be insurmountable?
Is this why the other product that we were going to be talking about? And to be fair, I don't know anything about it other than what I've seen. And I've been able to land an interview with the owner of this company next
I know a bit
Tuesday at
about it.
10:35. The company's called Spark Grill, and this has a thermostatic control, as you had mentioned. However, this is not a gas grill. This is a charcoal of some type driven grill. So it's not gas, as you had mentioned, but this is kind of a step in that direction.
Yeah, Spark is a new grill. We have a full-time grill tester on our team, Max Good. He's been a guest on your show before. I mean, is that a great job description? He's got a better job than I have.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy tests grills for a living. He has one right now. And when you asked me if I could address the subject today, I knew a little bit about it because I'm the one who stumbled into it and asked Max to take a look at it. And so he's gotten one and he's unboxed it and he's read the manual and he's starting to play with it. And we talked about it today. And I've got some insight into it. Let me describe what the Spark is, because it is very different and I would say somewhat revolutionary. It's a very cool concept. It sells for about $1,000, but right now they're discounting it to $749 with some packaged things, or $849. And I think Max said that he saw it for a while during the holiday season at $599.
Wow.
So it's being discounted. Available only online at the moment. It looks like a PK grill, and if you can pull it up. The PK and the Spark, they're kind of jelly bean shaped, but it's a double layer. They claim it has a layer of ceramic inside for insulation and porcelain coated. That's pretty serious stuff. This cooking surface is about 368 square inches, enough for 12 burgers, they say. Cast iron grates. It's got a little shelf on the side. But the cool thing is that it has a thermostat built in. There's a knob on the front. You have to plug it into the wall. The whole thing it depends on electricity, but it burns charcoal. And there's a knob on the front, and you turn the knob, and it ignites the charcoal. You set it for a temperature. It tells you when it hits that temperature. There's an app that comes with it. And the charcoal that it uses is not a normal charcoal. It's they call it a brick. It's about the size of my book here. You know?
I got a picture of it up on the web.
You got it
up
on the screen
thing right now. Yeah,
I don't know what the exact dimensions, but it's around 8.5 by 11 inches. One solid slab of charcoal with holes drilled in it. And there's an igniter underneath it. They claim it ignites quickly, but they recently sent out a notice to owners that some people are encountering problems igniting it. They're not quite sure why. They're trying to figure it out. And they recommend that in cold climate, you keep the charcoal indoors, not outdoors where it's really cold. So there's, some bugs right out of the gate. But they've got this big book size charcoal briquette, and they have 3 different types of briquettes, one for low, one for medium, one for high temperature cooking. And that seems weird to me because you might want to start at a low temp or end at a high temp or vice versa. I'm not quite sure. Max will know better, and you should probably book him one time in the next few weeks after he's had a chance to work with it. He usually takes about a month to really beat up on a device like this. It's clever. It's one of these things that you're going to spend $1,000, $800 on discount, and God forbid they go out of business, you can't get the charcoal anymore. I suppose you might be able to get Kingsford briquettes or something to work, but I don't know. I looked at the manual and their videos. It doesn't look like it's easy to set up in a 2-zone system. And I think any grill, and this is one of my problems with round Kamados, all grills should be able to be set up in 2 zones. This is why rectangular shapes are great. You can, I mean, like the PK, you can put all the coals on one side, none on the other side. Now you have two zones. You have two zones. You have temperature control. Cooking is all about controlling temperature. They say you can get two zone, but the hot zone is a circle in the center. So you're not going to put a pork butt off in a second zone. You can insert a deflector plate like you do on a Kamado to get a more even low temp cook. So it's just an interesting concept, whether it will last, whether it's going to need multiple levels of revision. I don't know. I mean, I kind of wish I had a chance to talk to him and say, please. Right now, that brick goes in the center, in the center.
Right in the center.
So there's just no way to get a hot side and a not hot side. I wish I could have talked him out of that. But, it's an interesting step. We love to cook. We want to cook well. We want temperature control. This is kind of like building in the barbecue guru to a Weber kettle or a PK grill. And it also comes with probes, by the way. You can plug them in, and the probes talk to the app with Bluetooth.
All right. Well, so we're going to be talking with the owner next week, and then we'll give Max a couple weeks to pound around on it, and then we'll have him back on, and we can talk to him about what he thinks and go from there. We're talking with Meathead from AmazingRibs.com. Meathead, we're going to take a break here real quick, and then we'll go ahead and catch up on the rub and sauce biz that you were recently into. So stand by, and we will be right back with Meathead from AmazingRibs.com. I'll talk to you quickly about Southside Market and Barbecue. Southside has been owned and operated by the same family for 3 generations, the oldest barbecue joint in Texas, offering premium Central Texas barbecue products, slow smoked over real wood, shipping, distributing, and manufacturing sausages for companies across the U.S., from food trucks to multi-chain restaurants. Southside can be on your menu, too. All meats are processed in their on-site USDA-inspected facility, a trusted partner with a focus on quality and authenticity. Wholesale options are available, shipping nationwide through FedEx or through food service distribution channels like Sysco, U.S. Foods, and Martin Foods. Co-packaging capable, from research and development to package completion. They can follow your recipe or help you do something brand new. Private label opportunities are also available. When you're visiting SouthsideMarket.com and you have everything in your checkout basket, you can save 10% off your entire order each and every time when you use promo code BBQ Central. That's BBQ CENTRAL, BBQ Central, one word, lowercase, and you can save 10% off your entire order at SouthsideMarket.com each and every time. We are back with more Meathead from AmazingRibs.com. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Howard Stern, Jim Rome, Dan Patrick, and Greg Rempe. The Mountain Rushmore of talk show entertainment. Now, let's get back to the Barbecue Central Show.
This portion of the show being brought to you by CookinPellets.com, your number one source for quality wood pellets. For all your pellet-driven cookers, visit CookinPellets.com for more information or to purchase. You can also visit at Amazon.com as well. And we are rejoined once again by Meathead from AmazingRibs.com. So what was it, a month or two ago, Meathead, you had mentioned that you had decided you were partnering or sourcing through Old World Spices, which is one of the premier and renowned rub and sauce manufacturers out there in this type of niche today. And you had mentioned just kind of an introductory of getting into it, and you were working on the Memphis dust, I think, at that point. And I'm wondering, where last year, was it last year? I think it was last year. We, maybe it was the year before, I forget. Maybe it was, who the fuck knows? I was following a guy by the name of Dion Blumenrader who was trying to bring a sauce to market. I did it for the whole year, once a quarter. We started right at the beginning of the year. I think it was 2019 going into 2000, now that I think about it. And he was just, a ham and egger like me and you. And, well, more like me and not you. And he wanted to get this sauce to market. And everybody told him how great it was. And you got to get it onto the store shelves. And I contacted him and said, boy, I would really love to track this once a quarter. And we did it. And it ended up kind of flopping for him, and he had, went into some debt and didn't really recover. And he had some issues with the sauce and the recipe, and he made some sacrifices that I think he regretted, and blah blah blah. So a long way to go to say it probably would be interesting, now that I think about it, that as you come on for your monthly visits, to get updates and see if you are running into similar trials and tribulations that some of the other folks that we've had on that are in the rub and sauce business have. So where are you at right now?
Hopefully we don't follow that path. Years ago, I was told that we ought to get into the sauce and rub business, and I said, absolutely not. Why would I compete with Malcolm Reed and Mark Lambert? And every barbecue joint in America has their sauce in a bottle next to the cash register. Why would I do that? And then about 2-3 years ago, I went to Kansas City. And while I was there, I visited Old World Spices with the idea of learning more about spices. And particularly, I'm interested in their solubility. What dissolves spices, and what's the best solvents and stuff. And I'm meeting with them, and the Jerry, the technical guy, shows me the lab. Oh, my God, it's incredible. Every spice and seasoning known to man. Marco Polo would just roll over in his grave if he saw this. And we tasted a few of them. And they got a team of bright young food scientists, and it blew me away. And I learned a lot. And as I'm walking out, Amy, the vice president, comes up and says, Meathead, you ought to have a line of spices and rubs and sauces. I said, nah, I'm not going into competition in that field. I'm a website. I know what I do. I do it well. I'm going to make it better. I'm not getting outside my my safety zone. And she says, well, here's something to think about. You get almost 2 million people a month come to that website, and they know the brand and they know the name. If you put rubs and sauces on the shelf, they would immediately have more brand recognition than almost anything. I mean, maybe Stubbs and a few others would be better known brands, but you would outshine all these other rubs and sauces made by these barbecue teams and competitors and restaurants that nobody's ever heard of. And that just kind of stuck. And I thought, well,
you mean somebody making you feel good about yourself was going to make you do something you might not otherwise want to do, Meathead?
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe a little ego got there.
She's the vice president of sales, I would assume.
Yes. Well, with all due respect, Greg, this was 2 years ago.
Sure.
And it just sat on my desk for 2 years. And I mentioned it at a staff meeting with my team. And they all said, yeah, let's do it.
Right.
And I'm thinking, no, I can't take on any more projects. I'm already working 7-day weeks. But we yacked it up, and we thought, okay, what if we take some of like Meathead's Memphis Dust is really popular. Every time I mention it in social media, dozens of people start raving about it.
Yes, I've seen
all the other rubs and sauces. And so I'm thinking, well, maybe we'll try it. So I contact them, and we strike a deal. And so it's been a fascinating process. We're working on 2 tracks or 3 tracks right now: rubs, sauces, and label. You've got to design a label. The brand is pretty straightforward. It's Meatheads, and it's got my ugly face on the cover. The same picture that's on my book cover, hoping for connection there. The book has sold 250,000 copies. Now we're putting it on the website. The new website, which we'll launch in February, is now going to be named meatheadsamazing.ribs.com to tie it all together. Meathead the book, Meathead's rubs and spices and sauces, and now the website Meatheads, trying to get brand recognition rolled up in one. So we figured all that out. We got the label. We've settled upon a design. If we had screen sharing, I'd show the label here.
Don't you have a bottle of it?
Well, this is not the final label. This is like the label,
Yeah.
but this one makes me look like some sort of god with the halo around me.
God and maybe a little bit of Colonel Sanders.
Yeah, well, the Colonel Sanders thing I don't mind.
Yeah, of course. It's
I don't
iconic.
mind, but I don't need a halo. So we've eliminated the halo. But it looks pretty much like this. It's on a tan paper.
Yeah.
Very simple, and no halo. And the lettering is a little different than I just showed you. But we adhere to all. You've got federal laws. You got size requirements for the UPC, the Universal Product Code.
Sounds expensive.
You've got all kinds of fun stuff that you got to do to require. But we came up with a fun idea. The past year, we've produced 3 ebooks in Kindle.
Right.
And there's one on ribs,
Yes.
one on chicken, and
Sous
one on
vide
sous vide Q.
Right.
And they all sell for $3.99 on Kindle on Amazon. And so we thought, well, what if we gave people, the cost of an ebook is zero. I mean, it's in producing the original copy, which we've paid for by Amazon sales. What if we offer a free ebook with every purchase? Well, that gives us a competitive leg up on everybody. Buy this rub, buy this sauce, get a free ebook. So we are doing that. We've got a little QR code. Is it on this bottle here? Yeah. There's a QR code there.
Yes.
And if you scan, God,
You're right there. We got it. There you go.
If you scan the QR code, you'll get a free ebook. So that's kind of cool. And we've settled on 3 rubs. Nothing fancy. Not what are some of? Hey, I love Sterling Ball and Big Papa, and I love the clever names he's got. But we're not using money
Happy ending.
or happy ending.
What does that mean?
It's they're pork rub, poultry rub, and red meat rub. That's all they have. Very simple, straightforward, descriptive, and they're good. They're based upon the rub recipes that we published on the website, with one very big difference and then another minor difference. The very big difference is anybody who follows AmazingRibs.com knows that I have made a big deal out of don't put salt in your rubs.
Right.
That salt behaves differently than all the herbs and spices, and salt can actually penetrate deep into the meat. Garlic, paprika, all that other stuff cannot. The molecule's too large. Salt is just sodium and chloride and 2 atoms, and they ionize, they get an electrical charge, and they can go deep into the meat. But sugar is 23 atoms. It's huge. It can get into some of the pores and cracks and crevices, but it can't go more than a 16th or an eighth of an inch below the surface. And think about it. Every time you make pulled pork, that bark is fantastic. It's full of flavor. That's where your rub is. But when you get down into the center of that pulled pork, it's just pulled pork.
Right.
It doesn't even have smoke flavor. The smoke doesn't penetrate. The only thing that can get down there is salt. So I've made a big deal about you apply the salt beforehand, a cup, overnight or a day before, and give it a chance to penetrate. And then, you just can't compete price-wise, because all the rubs on the shelf are full of salt. Some of them are 50% salt, and salt's cheap. So that makes the end product really inexpensive. If you try to come out with a rub that is all herbs and spices and no salt, you'd be by far the most expensive one on the shelf. And no matter what you say on the side label, you can't explain, look at folks, we know it's expensive because it doesn't have salt in it. It's just not going to fly. You can't market that. So I've broken down, and we've put salt in the blends, but we're finessing it. And I know people out there are going to call me phony baloney, but we're finessing it with the fine print. Can you see?
Seasoning and dry rub?
So seasoning and dry brine.
Oh, dry brine. Yes. All right.
Seasoning and dry brine. That's the salt part. It's a dry brine. And I explain on the side label that you want to add it in advance so that the salt has a chance to penetrate. So we're trying to finesse the idea that there's salt in there when we've made a big deal about there shouldn't be. But it works. And the blends are good. They're different than the recipes on the website. They have to be. Otherwise, why buy it? And one of the things that's different is most of them are smoked. We have smoked the ingredients. So you've got smoked paprika, you got some smoked garlic, you got smoked pepper, and they have a really nice smoky smell and flavor. And then the sauces. So it's interesting when you do this process, you create a recipe, and like I have a recipe for a sauce that uses raspberry jelly. They're not going to put raspberry jelly in a sauce.
Right.
It's too expensive, and they have to buy it from Smucker's or someplace. So you have to reformulate for stuff for ingredients they have, and you've got to communicate with them back and forth. Okay, what ingredients do you have? What smoked ingredients do you have? And then they send you samples. And we've gone through 3 sets of rubs to get to we're waiting for the final set. We think we've nailed it, and sometime this week we should be getting the final set of the rubs, and they should be just what we want, and we can lock it down. But we've gone through 3 or 4 iterations of the rubs to taste, and now, if it was just me, they could just send it to me. But I've got 4 or 5 key people around and Dave Joachim, our editor, is in Pennsylvania. Husky, who runs the Pitmaster clubs in Michigan. Jim, my webmaster, who's got a great palate, is a few hours from me here. Max is also a few hours from me here. And so we have to have them ship samples to us, and we have to have Zoom meetings to discuss, okay, I tried it on a pork chop the other day. And so it's been a really fun process of tasting and fine-tuning. Oh, and Clint, of course, is in on it. Clint Cantwell, he's in Memphis. So it's a Zoom internet collaboration to create these flavor profiles. And we're very close. Now we're working on the sauces, and we're working with the label designer. And with luck, we'll have these 2 sauces, 3 rubs, ready to be distributed on the market in probably late March or early April. And they'll go primarily to barbecue stores and hardware stores, not groceries. One of the things we've learned is that the grocery store market is just hellacious. Getting placement on grocery store shelves, you've got a lot of palms to grease. And so I'm just learning a lot, and I'm happy if you want on a regular basis to share what I'm learning in case there's somebody out there who wants to follow in our path. But it's a fascinating, fun, and treacherous process.
Yeah, I think we want to keep on that because at this point you are, in the easiest part, where the part that you have most control. Now is the time where you're going to have to start turning it over and selling it and recouping costs. Well, I mean, what are you in right now from a cost startup?
Very little. Old World Spices is working on the come right now. We have a contract. So I right now the only outlay I have is to the label designer, and they're not cheap. I'm working with a good artist who is doing what I asked, and I've paid him about $5,000 so far, and we're pretty sure it will cost about $7,000 by the time we're done with the basic label design for all products.
All right. So we'll get another update when we revisit there in February. So sounds like things are going mostly smoothly at the moment. And
so far, so good. Now, there's been a little stumbling block with the sauces, and I'll let you know how that turns out next month.
All right, we'll do that. In the meantime, you can check out Meathead over at AmazingRibs.com and find him on some social media channels as well. And, of course, you find him on the second Tuesday of the month right here on the show. Meathead, always appreciate the time, and we will see you in February.
Greg, always good talking to you, and I'm glad to be in 2021 with you.
No doubt.
And good luck to your Browns and to all of you Centralites.
All right, there he is, Meathead from Amazing Ribs right there on this show. You find him here on the second Tuesday of every month. That's right. So it sounds like the sauces are more or less dialed in. And, I'm sorry, the rubs are more or less dialed in. And then we'll see what happens with the sauces next month. We'll see. All right. Let me talk to you quickly about B&B Charcoal. Also one of the newer sponsors of the show, providing lump charcoal, briquette charcoal, wood pellets. We are probably going to be talking about that next week with Ed Riley. I believe I have him at the 9:35 segment next week, actually. So looking forward to talking with him. Now remember, B&B started out back in the early 60s. I think it was 1962, 1965, somewhere along these lines. They have been owned and operated. I believe they're starting in their third generation. It might be just the second generation of ownership at this point. But they started out as a lump company. Then, realizing that they had the char dust laying around after they had made their lump charcoal, they decided to get into making the briquette product. And then there was actually some fines left over from the briquette process. And then they swooped all those up, put them through an extruding process, and that's how you make your char logs, which I am a huge fan of. So whatever the fuel source, and at this point it's still tough to find everything everywhere. So if you have an Ace store that you are frequenting, make friends with the manager, as I tell you, and then ask about all the stuff that they might have. If they don't have it in-store specifically, then tell them to go online. There's a lot of general warehousing access that they should be able to ship in from and get you the stuff that you're looking for. And then, of course, tell everybody that you know about B&B, especially if they have the charcoal cookers or if they have a pellet cooker. That's very popular now. We'll continue to grow into 2021, and we'll talk to Ed about those pellets next week. And again, you know, if you're a consistency and I want to know if I add X amount of briquettes, or X amount of fuel, I'm getting this much heat increase. Briquettes are more your style. If you're a little more fly by the seat of your pants, or you know you want the high heat, lump should be more your game. And if you want something that gives you that lump access, but then will burn forever, those char logs are going to be something you're definitely going to want to try. I use them to actually supplement my wood splits when I'm running the Lang to keep that coal bed robust. bbcharcoal.com. That's bbcharcoal.com. And we are back to wrap the first hour right after this. Stick around.
Continuing to produce incredibly mediocre content in an exceptionally professional way. You're listening and watching the Barbecue Central Show. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
This segment brought to you by Fireboard 2 and the Fireboard 2 Drive and the Fireboard 2 Pro. The thermocouple version, 6 different temperatures simultaneously, monitoring. You can connect through Wi-Fi, cloud-based monitoring. Fireboard.com, 816-945-2232. That's right. All right, we are getting ready to head to the second hour. Thanks again to Meathead for joining me for the last 2 segments. Looking forward to some monthly updates now from his sauce and rub venture. Again, I was a little skeptical waiting this long to get into it, but it sounds like the lady at Old World Spices has championed Meathead's cause, and they are well on the way March or April for retail. So we'll check it out. I'll step away, refresh libations, and I will see you in about 2 minutes. Stick around. We'll be right back.
is Maddie Rempe from Cleveland, Ohio, and you're listening to BBQ Central.
Happy to have you aboard here for the really big barbecue show.
Boing. We cook because we have to, and we grill because we want to.
Hit me!
Fine, how's it going?
You have a great show. I'm a big fan.
Boing.
So what seems to be the problem here? This man looks like he's dead, and he's in the crackle. Charbono! It's all about the Charbono, dude.
Succulent fish. What?
He ate 2 feet 4 wieners.
Oh, listen, Liberty, shut your face.
I'm shaking like a dog shit peach seeds.
We have top men working on it right now. Top men.
And just like that, we are into the second hour. Welcome aboard. It's the Barbecue Central Show. We talk about live fire barbecue and grilling topics for 2 hours every Tuesday evening from 9 to 11. Recording all the way through, so if you can't get it live, you can get it through the podcast feed. First hour will go up on Wednesday, second hour on Thursday. So make sure that you hit up all your podcast platforms or whatever your favorite is. As I had mentioned last week, we are also on Amazon Music. So wherever it is that you get your podcasts or you subscribe or stream your podcast, I am there. Just search the BBQ Central Show and away you go. Still to come on the show, RT Custer from Vortic Watch Company in about 13 minutes. And then we will end the show this evening where I will unfortunately be banning a Barbecue Central Show guest Hall of Famer. So stay tuned for that. Do you have any guesses? If you want to shoot them up on the instant chat, go ahead. I will not tell you if you are right or wrong, but you can know that you got your guess in ahead of time before I make the unfortunate reveal here in about 40 minutes from now or so. Don't forget, you can follow me socially at BBQ Central Show on Instagram and Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat, /BBQ Central Show on Facebook and Twitch, /RD Rempe on YouTube. Coming up on the best moments of the Barbecue Central Show in 10 minutes or less this Friday, episode 159. We're taking you back to January 3rd, 2012. And my guest that evening was none other than the, at that point, current KCBS president, a longtime owner, and one-time sponsor of this show, Barbecuers Delight Wood Pellets owner Candy Sue Weaver. And she took the time out to take us through a journey and a look back at the pellet business, how they got into the pellet making world, what separates their products from the rest of the pellets. I'll tell you what I found. John is doing an incredible job at doing the cliffhanger of the best moments. It's, the whole production is 10 minutes or less, hence the name. And I fell for it again. I did a little bit of a preview the other day over the weekend as I was loading it in, and we got right to a point in the conversation of that Best Moments show, and I was waiting for Candy to answer, and then the sounder hit, the show ended, and I was like, oh, he did it again. I fell for it again. But he is becoming very dynamic at getting people sucked in to the best of, and then, of course, I'm hitting that whole show archive link that's also in the show notes for the best of. He's doing a fabulous job here. All right, so we're getting to the point that I love here. Everybody's loving the new watch cam that we've had up here for about 5 weeks or so, getting through it. And tonight, I'm going to show you a watch that perhaps you have never seen before. We're going to be talking with one of the co-founders here next segment. But this is a Vortic watch. I've been showing you some out of my personal collection recently. But so this is, believe it or not, well, I mean, I'm sure you can believe it as we get it a little bit more sexied up to the camera there. So you can see here is, what you call the crown. I don't know how many you folks are watch people out there, so I don't want to get too technical with you. But this is a crown. So this is, at one point or in its original life, And let me see if I can get the camera to agree here. So it says Burlington special there. This was a pocket watch, 70, 80, 90, 100 years ago. I don't know the huge specifics on this watch, but this was a pocket watch. Remember, back in the day, and we'll talk with RT about this here in a few minutes, this was the watch, right? It wasn't what you see on a wrist. But then again, folks were dressing pretty dandy back then. Everybody was wearing better than business casual on a regular basis. They were wearing dress shirts, always had vests on. And then, this is where you saw a watch like this. It was on some kind of a chain. I'm sure there's a technical name for that. And it was in a pocket of the vest, or perhaps they wore it in a little bit of a different fashion and put it around one of the belt loops and then in their pants pocket. But this was originally a pocket watch. And it is now a wristwatch. So you can see case thickness here, and it's on a very nice leather strap. And, this now I'm going to show you something that I really like that Vortic does. I'm a bit of a voyeur, and I know a lot of us are voyeurs, if you will. And if you take off my wrist and then we look at the back of this, let me get a better shot here. They have allowed you to see, let me get it up so it will focus. Come on. Oh, here we go. No? Are you not going to focus for me? Come on. Here we go. There we go. So you can see the, let's call them the guts of the watch. So this is technically called the movement. This is what makes the dial work, so you can actually tell the time. And you take this off your wrist, you can show everybody, hey, guess what? Here are the guts of the watch, and you can see it. It's moving all right there. I mean, it looks spectacular. And, this is... half of me thinks that the numbers should be on this side of the watch, too. You can see everything happening like all at the same time. But, oh, my God, that would be a travesty to the dial of this watch. This is a railroad edition watch, and you can tell that because it's got all of the minutes sectioned out there, as you can see. 1, 2, 3, all the way 60 back up to the noon, or back up to the 12 there, and then you got the second hand, or the seconds there in the middle at the 6 o'clock position. This is an incredible piece. And again, this is the back part of it, which is, just incredible. You get to see everything happening there. And, barbecue guys and gals, we love to see the process. We love to be looking at fire. We love to be looking at the charcoals burning. So, no different than something along these lines here, where you can see everything that's making that watch, pardon the pun, tick underneath it or behind it. And then, of course, you have this classic dial right there that was originally a pocket watch. So very excited to talk with RT here in a couple minutes about that. Also, let me remind you from a best of standpoint, if you want to talk to John or you want to send him a message about a favorite interview or segment that you've heard in the past, make sure that you send him an email. It's JON at thebbqcentralshow.com, and then let him know what you're looking for, and he will do his best to meet your expectation. Now let me see if I can't get to this. Who could make you eat undercooked chicken or moldy bread? Do you think it could be anybody? Well, let me pause my ad blocker, because everything on the internet anymore says you got to pause your ad blocker. Who do you think it could be? Could it be your future in-laws? Yes. Research suggests that eating undercooked chicken or moldy bread could be the fault of your in-laws. From CNN.com in their health section. We all know these foods are risky, could make us sick, but research has suggested that in certain high-stakes social situations, like dinner with your prospective in-laws or a barbecue at your new boss's house, you might eat them anyway. No, don't. Please say it's not. Researchers in the ever-evolved country of Norway evaluated 17 different social situations to assess how people felt about the consequences of not eating the food we're served and found that being invited into one's future's parents' in-laws' home or for the first time being judged at a professional boss's situation, the biggest pressure to be polite and not refuse food is something that people are not necessarily interested in doing. We might imagine that this situation, the anticipated cost of eating something like this, was weighed against the anticipated cost of being judged impolite or rude. In the worst case, as a unsuitable son or daughter-in-law, said Nina Vieften, a professor at the Department of Marketing at the Norwegian Business School. Here's what I say. We should all be so lucky to be me and have my in-laws, because I can tell you right now, there is a 0.0% chance that they are undercooking anything. I have told you on many occasions, my in-laws have patented the triple cook method, which means parboiling pretty much to a done extent. Then it goes to a grill to put on that grill flavor. And then it is taken from the grill and run through the microwave for a certain period of time just to make sure everything is done. There's no way that I'm ever in a potential situation of eating anything undercooked, even when I was courting my to-be wife 20 plus years ago. I was heavily safe. Now, what's funny is the shoe is not on the other foot. If they come over to my house and I serve a pork tenderloin at 140 and it's pink in the middle, they're like, oh, we ain't eating this shit. No way. I'm going to get trichinosis. But I never had to worry about that. It wasn't going to happen to me. All right, let me talk to you quickly about Green Mountain Grills before we get to RT Custer from Vortic. Green Mountain Grills, two of the best pellet cooker lines that you can choose from currently on the market. You have a choice line, you have a prime line, you figure out which one is best for you. If I might make a suggestion, if you're a person that likes the tech, then you might want to check the choice or the prime line. Prime line's got 2 internal meat probes. You got peek-in windows on the main cooking chamber and on the pellet hopper. Also, you have Wi-Fi connectivity. You can download the app. You can use that app to make custom recipes and cooking cycles. If you want to save $200-300 or more, then you can choose the choice line. The sizes of the cookers are the same, whether it's choice or prime. It's just the level of tech and the extra features and benefits that you're going to get. Now, there's a Prime Plus that's got lights inside the cooking chamber, so you can light it up at night, make sure that you're seeing exactly what's going on. Either way, the choice in the Prime line, when you have the Daniel Boone and the Jim Bowie, those both accommodate that pizza oven insert. That's something you're definitely going to want to get, so you can have that high-heat pizza option. It's fun and exciting. Green Mountain Grills are selling through dealers, so you're going to have to go there. Go to greenmountaingrills.com, find a dealer near you, and then check them out. They'll get you educated, they'll get you home, and you'll be ready for success right from Jump Street. greenmountaingrills.com, that's greenmountaingrills.com. And we are back with RT Custer right after this. Stick around, we'll be right back.
You're listening to the #1 most downloaded barbecue and grilling podcast anywhere. The Barbecue Central Show. Monthly visits from a killer hog, a cooking guy, a man named Meathead, the author of Barbecue Bible, a grill girl, a bristly barbecue journalist, and the malfeasance of the barbecue world known as the embedded correspondents. Only found right here on the Barbecue Central Show.
And this portion brought to you by Pit Barrel Cooker, the most unbelievable outdoor cooking device on the planet. Currently available in 2 sizes with a host of accessories. Whether you're a beginner or a professional, definitely a cooker you want to add to the arsenal. Visit pitbarrelcooker.com and tell them the Barbecue Central Show sent you. You know, I've said it before, I'll say it again. While this show is a barbecue and grilling show, it's not always about barbecue and grilling. And tonight we do a bit of format break to talk about another passion of mine that has burned on and off for 5, 10 years perhaps, and it's watches. And I talk with one of the newest sponsors of the show, co-founder of a company called Vortic Watch Company, and we'll be talking about their very unique products that I have absolutely fallen in love with. So we go ahead and race to the hotline and welcome in first-timer to the show, RT Custer. Hey, RT.
Hey, Greg. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Thanks for making time this evening to talk about Vortic and to talk about what perhaps a lot of people aren't aware of. I know I wasn't, and that is the history of watchmaking here in the States quite a long time ago. Before we get into that, beginnings of your company and such, let's do a little tie back to the format and function of this show, which is barbecue and grilling. So are you a fan of barbecue? Are you a fan of grilling or both? Like, what's your live fire experience and preference?
Yes, sir. Yeah, all the things, really anything meat. If I could go on the Joe Rogan diet and just eat meat, I've actually strongly considered that. I have a Traeger myself and use it for basically everything that I can think of, including, I guess, most recently, I haven't used it much because I've been really cold here, but did Thanksgiving turkey on the Traeger this year, and that was a really fun experience, honestly.
RT, are you a fan of the Traeger because of the ease, or let's call it the thermostatic control, so you can dial in a specific temperature? I had Meathead on from AmazingRibs.com in the first hour, and we were talking a little bit about some cookers that are coming to market that are having more of a thermostatic control on it, and yet we were pondering how over the genesis of gas grills, not one has come to market where you can set it for 350 or 400 degrees or something in between there, where it would function like an oven. Do you use that Traeger because you have that ease and convenience?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm certainly a novice as it comes to just cooking in general, and so the more technology and aid I can get from my tools, the better. And that's what sold me on the Traeger initially, is just plug and play. Really hard to mess up.
What's your favorite thing to make?
Rib eyes, a reverse sear on a rib eye is my favorite thing to do.
You're in Fort Collins, Colorado, right?
That's correct.
All right. So because I'm a standard American, my geography isn't that great. Like, where are you related to Denver? Where is Fort Collins?
Fort Collins is about an hour north of Denver,
All right,
along
so
the main highway.
not too bad. Have you ever been to a place called GQ Barbecue in Denver by chance?
I haven't. I haven't explored Denver as much as I should have, and I will add that to my list because I really need to do that more.
Yes. Well, if you decide to go, you need to get in touch with me previously. You tell me the exact day you're going to go. I personally know the owner, Jason Ganal over there, GQ, and he will give you the personal GQ experience. And this is a guy who has experienced a lot of success on the competition trail and since branched off into doing his own barbecue restaurant out there in the Denver area and doing it with quite a bit of success and fanfare. So just let me know when you're going to go out there, and I'll make sure Jason takes care of you to no problem.
I will.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into the watch talk a little bit. So before we get into the origins of Vortic, let's go back in time, perhaps, for a bit of a history lesson. And I'd referenced it a couple minutes ago about American watchmaking. And I think it's very common at this day and age to associate watchmaking and watchmakers with Swiss or perhaps the Japanese. But America did have quite a history in it, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I call them the 10 great American watch companies. But between, I would say, the mid 1800s and the mid 1900s, America was the Switzerland of the world. There were hundreds of millions of pocket watches made here, mostly in the Northeast and the Midwest, by about 10 companies, 10 major companies. But the closest comparison to modern day manufacturing is the auto industry, in terms of, if you think of America right now, and one of the things that we make a lot of, and we make some really good quality manufacturing, it's cars. We make some amazing cars, especially in Michigan, right? And that's what you think of when you think of big manufacturing companies in America. That's what the watch companies were pretty much 100 years, 1850 to 1950.
Watches, or at least a certain watch, I showed it in the previous segment, the one I'm wearing on my wrist right now, is a railroad grade watch. When you go to your website, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in depth when we talk about the company itself, You guys are specializing, I guess, in a railroad style watch and a artisan style watch, or not a railroad watch. So,
Yep.
when does these are pocket watches? So, if we were living in the mid 1800s, mid 1900s, we're not wearing wristwatches at that point, or at least they hadn't come into style or thought of. So, people were telling time through pocket watches. So, where does the introduction of or why does a railroad watch even come into play?
Yeah, so the wristwatch mostly came in to history, and people started wearing the wristwatch after World War One, and especially after World War Two. And so, I would say the 50s, 60s, and forward, pocket watches just started to become obsolete, basically, and people were wearing wristwatches. And so now, almost 100 years after these were made, most pocket watches, and like I said, there's millions of them out there, they get scrapped for gold or silver, predominantly at pawn shops. Or people take them to estates, or they get sold in estate sales, or they get handed down generation to generation and kept in a drawer. I mean, it's a pocket watch. Most people aren't going to wear it every day, and eventually the grandson or granddaughter or great grandson, whatever, decides they're never really going to use this pocket watch, and they're going to let it exit the family. And so there's a lot of pocket watches out in the world right now, and a lot of them through pawn shops, they get scrapped for the gold or silver of the case and the inside, which we call, as you said earlier, the movement and the dial, which is the face of the watch, and the hands, all the timekeeping components. That's trash to a pawn shop who only cares about the gold. And so that's where Vortic Watch Company comes in. We salvage and restore antique American pocket watches and turn them into one-of-a-kind wristwatches.
Can you give us at all any schooling on the differences of the movements? As I had become more into the nitty gritty of watches, I've learned a lot more. I thought, originally you get a watch and it was something you were going to have to replace a battery in every so often when you saw that it just stopped keeping time. But there's, maybe 2 or 3 other variations of ways that watches work and keep time.
Yeah, so what you're describing there is what we call quartz. Whenever there's a battery in a watch, that means it's a quartz movement, and that's just a very modern way to tell time. It's a lot less expensive to make a movement like that. It's just electronics, and that's how most watches are made now. And that really came about in the 70s, and it was Swatch. Remember the Swatch watches?
Yes.
They really mass marketed the quartz. They call it the quartz revolution. Before that, in wristwatches, the newest, hottest technology was what we call today automatic movements, and they are like these old pocket watch movements, except you don't have to wind them up with the crown. They have a rotor that spins around inside the watch and keeps it wound for you, and that's why people sell those like automatic watch winders that rotate the watch, and you can kind of see the watch rotating. It's rotating like it's on your wrist, and that way it's staying wound. That technology came out in the 50s, and so everything that we touch, these old pocket watches, is older than that. They're all mechanical, manually wound. You have to wind them up, just like, again, making the car reference, just like you had to wind your car, crank the engine up to get it going. Same exact thing. You have to wind these old pocket watches. That was the technology in the 1800s and early 1900s.
R.T. Custer joining us here from Vortic Watch Company. VorticWatches.com is the website if you want to check it out here while we're talking. When I look at what watches are bringing value to the market, or, when you start looking into, they actually call them luxury level watches. Those are all automatic movement watches. You don't really have the ones that require the winding like those pocket watches that you had just mentioned. And is it safe to assume that if you have, something that's like this pocket watch that is now a wristwatch or an automatic movement watch, that those watches are going to be holding their value if you spend $5,000 or $10,000 on a watch, that because of the movement, that's something that is going to hold its value through its life, and even if you pass it down, somebody could go take it to the secondary market and get more of the return on that initial investment?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's two big things to think about as far as if you try to think about watches as an investment, and typically I try to talk people out of that. There, especially in today's world, there's a lot better investments out there.
Yeah.
However, if if you want it and you want to invest in a watch, to get something that's going to at least hold or maintain value, you need to spend thousands of dollars to get to a movement that's worthy of being, an heirloom and taken care of for years and years. However, a lot of, besides like the quality of the movement and it being high end and very well made, which most people perceive as Switzerland, and most of the thousands of dollar watches are made in Switzerland, Rolex, Omega, etc. The other thing is the brand. So a Rolex, a Patek Philippe, and some of those very high end brands, they will maintain their value, or potentially Rolex has actually increased value significantly in recent years. And that's mostly due to supply and demand that they drive with their billions of dollars in advertising. Same with Omega. Omega, maintains its brand very well and can maintain value. And there's hundreds of watch companies though, so it's hard to get lost in that. And so if you're going to spend thousands or tens of thousands on a watch, and you want a Swiss watch like a Rolex, definitely best to talk to a dealer or someone who deals and sells them every day, because they can educate you. As far as I am concerned, I can tell you all about pocket watches and which ones are more rare. That's really what I deal in, is the rarity, and how, like, they only made 100 of these pocket watches of this specific model, 110 years ago, and so it's the rarest thing on the planet, and that's what makes it very valuable. So I deal in rarities. We like to think of our watches as art, not necessarily a mechanical system.
And that kind of leads us into the origins of the company. So it's a unique story. It wasn't just solely you. You had, I guess, found somebody with a similar interest, or at least a watch passion to some degree. So how does Vortic at least become an idea, and then we can talk about how you actually set it in motion to become a business?
For sure, yeah. So we had this idea on the golf course at Penn State. We were both studying. I was studying engineering. My business partner Tyler was studying mathematics, and we we're both nerds and just talking about guy stuff, American made, making stuff, golf, um, and just having fun. And we came up with a bunch of ideas for different watch models and types that we could make. But the origin of the idea was, how could we make something that was actually made in USA? I mean, truly made in America. Because like you said right off the bat, most people think of China, Switzerland, and Japan for watches. And so there weren't many, and there still aren't many American watch companies today. And so we really went down the rabbit hole of, like, what's possible, what can be made here, what has been made in America as far as watches are concerned. And that's how we stumbled on the history of the old pocket watch companies. And then that led us to go into a pawn shop and try to buy an old pocket watch to see if we could maybe refurbish it or just take it apart and learn how it was made. And then we found out that there was hundreds, if not thousands, of these pocket watches. And if we restored them and made all the outside parts to make a wristwatch, we could make the only truly American-made watch on the market. And that's what we do.
So what year do you guys officially start Vortic?
We had the idea in 2013. We launched on Kickstarter in late 2014. We didn't actually ship a watch until 2015. If you're familiar with Kickstarter crowdfunding, kind of takes a while to get the idea off the ground. So we've been making watches officially for over 5 years, and we like to say it's been almost a decade since, like, inception.
Would you have been able to get off the ground had it not been for the crowdsourcing or the crowdfunding project?
Maybe, but we would have had to raise money from investors or somehow get a bank loan. I mean, we had just literally that year graduated from college. We were broke. We set the goal on Kickstarter for $10,000 because that seemed like an enormous amount of money. And how could you not start a business with so much, $10,000? It's just insane. So We ended up raising 41,000 in the 30 days on Kickstarter, and what we didn't really make any profit off of those sales. We didn't charge enough for the watches right off the bat. However, we proved product market fit. We proved that there was people out there that would spend thousands of dollars on a pocket watch turned into a wristwatch because they loved us, they loved the story, they loved the design, one of those things. And then we went to banks and investors and started raising money to buy all the machines we have now to do it.
So what are you sourcing from a watch standpoint, and then what are you actually making from a watch standpoint to make it a Arctic piece or a Vortic piece?
Yeah, so Vortic is like Vortex and TikTok, a beautiful clash of old and new. I try to think everything on the inside of the watch is old. So the movement, all the gears and springs that tell time that you can see through the back, that's all old. The dial, the face of the watch, and then the hands, that is all antique. So everything between the glass is an original piece of American history. Everything, including the glass on the outside, that makes it a wristwatch. So the case, the metal case, that stainless steel ring around the back, the glass itself, and then the leather and the buckle, that's what we make in modern day. So everything you can touch on the outside is new. Everything on the inside that you can't touch is old. It's kind of like a museum. Everything between the glass is an antique.
RT Custer joining us here on the show, and we're talking about the company Vortic Watches. Vortic Watch Company, VorticWatches.com is the website. So aside from the watches that you're selling on the website, what I found unique was, and as you had mentioned, maybe you're somebody that has a grandfather or grandmother, uncle, great uncle that had gifted you, or there's a pocket watch that's making its way down the family channels. You can also be commissioned to take somebody's current pocket watch and then make that into a custom wristwatch as well.
Absolutely. We're the only company in the world that does that. So that's what we love to do. That idea actually came from, we launched on Kickstarter trying to save the old pocket watches from the pawn shops and bring them back. And then we had tons of people reach out to us, say, hey, what about my grandpa's? What about my grandma's pocket watch? What do I do with this? And we were like, well, crap, like I guess we're gonna have to solve that problem, because people are really excited about that. And you want to talk about an heirloom, this is something that now you're taking a pocket watch that was almost a burden to pass down, because it's like, hey, you're never going to use this, but like put it in the drawer because it's really valuable. And now people can actually wear their family heirloom every day, and we have hundreds of customers that have done that. And we call it Convert Your Watch. Which you don't even have to go to our website to check it out. You can just Google "Convert Your Watch," and we kind of own that section of the Google, as they say. And yeah, that's mostly what we're selling right now. We're actually totally sold out of watches. We last year we implemented a watch of the day. So every single day, Monday through Friday, we make one new one of a kind watch, and when it's sold, it's gone forever. And that worked so well, and we got so much publicity and everything out of it that we're back ordered for months.
Wow.
So we're hoping to get totally cleaned up, caught up, and start up that watch of the day sometime in February. And so for now, that we have a gallery on the site of all the other watches we've made, so you can like click through, and if you want one like that, there's a little form that says, hey, can you build me, or can you find me a pocket watch like this one? It's really cool. We have lots of other ways to order stuff, but we are currently sold out of instant gratification. Yeah, the sold watches gallery is what we call that gallery.
Yeah, so we're just kind of scrolling through that here, and you can see some of the stuff that has already been sold. So if I like, one of these, then I just click on that, and then I can say, hey, build me something similar to this, and then you start scouring the sources that you have to bring in a similar dial and movement along these lines.
Yeah, and sometimes we'll say, hey, that's great. We're going to just take down your information and get back to you when we find something similar to that. Sometimes people say, hey, I really want, I need a watch by this date for, graduation, wedding, Father's Day, what have you. And so then we obviously, put a little more urgency through that. We have a lot of customers, especially people that send us their grandfather's or grandmother's pocket watch, and they're just like, hey, this thing's been in a drawer for 50 years. So if it takes 8 weeks to get back to me with a custom project, like, it's no big deal. That's one of the best things about running a watch company is, we're not saving anybody's life. Nothing is ever urgent in this business, it just makes it a lot more fun to run.
Let's talk a little bit about cost and is this a little different than most watch companies, or this is a little different than most watch companies? So, I think a lot of folks don't realize, like that company Swatch that you had just mentioned. I mean, they own a bunch of brands. I mean, they're a really big deal in the watch brand business and the making. So this isn't like you have a bunch of people you're making. Line 1 is making this kind of watch, and line 2 is making this kind of watch, and it's just boom, 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 and you're going. These are all individual, unique pieces. So what are we looking at? And I guess it would have to be more or less from a high level because it would depend on dials and movements and all that other stuff and what you're putting into it. But do you have an idea of cost on watches in general? And then, how they separate out between, something like this, which is a artisan style watch, and then this one, which is a railroad style watch?
Yeah, absolutely. So our price range in general is 2,000 to 10,000, which is what Ralph Lauren at some point in the last couple of years, he said the sweet spot in the watch industry is 2,000 to 5,000, and so that's where we tried to lay is right in that realm. And yeah, with it's funny because Swatch people perceive as the cheap watches, $20-$50, but they also own Omega, which is a $4 billion company. So it's fascinating when you start diving into, I mean, any luxury industry, right? You think about the liquor industry, it's all conglomerates. So,
Yep.
so yeah, that's fascinating to think about. But in our range, that 2,000 to 10,000, we have the American Artisan series, which are the smaller ones, either 46 or 49 millimeters. They're pendant set, which means you just simply pull the crown straight out, set your time, pop it back in. Very simple mechanism, not quite as rare as the railroad watches. And those are the 2,000 to 4,000 range. And then we have our railroad edition, which is that larger one that you have. You actually have to take the whole bezel of the watch off in order to get to the lever, which is a safety mechanism they used on the railroad back then, so you didn't accidentally pull the crown out and change the time on the railroad. So you have to take that whole bezel off and then pull the lever, and then it'll let you change the time. That takes a lot more engineering for us. Also, those railroad watches are much more rare, and so those are I would say the 4 to 6 range, and then the 6 and above, then we get into very, very rare one-off pieces, as well as our military edition. The military edition is what I'm wearing, and these are pocket watches flown on the B bombers in World War II. And so the rarity and the history and the story behind the military edition is what makes it that valuable. And it's just vortecwatches.com/military for all the cool info on that one.
Let me ask a tough question here because I'm seeing like some in the instant chat. And I know I was going to get this. You have guys here that have no problem dropping $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, $25,000 on a barbecue pit. And we're talking about watches, and you mentioned 2,000 or 4,000 or 5,000. And they're like, holy shit, why would I spend that much on a watch? In this instance, we're talking about pieces of history that you are bringing to a certain degree into a modern world, right? It's not a thing that's hanging on a chain going in your vest because you don't dress like that anymore, or in your pocket. You're putting it on a wrist, and there is a process of conversion that has to take place, and you have to find these things in order to make them work. So do you ever have to go into like a sales process, or how do you explain to somebody why $2,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 seems like a lot of money, but in the end, this is value. We have a saying in the barbecue world, buy the best and only cry once. And I would assume in this instance that also applies.
I like that saying a lot. I never really address those conversations, but more than just to say if $2,000 as our minimum price is more than you're comfortable spending on a watch, then I'd be happy to help you find something that's less. If you really need a watch for function, or just fashion, you want it to look cool. There's a bunch of other brands. There's other brands that make stuff in America. I mean, you got Shinola in Detroit. They make some really cool looking stuff, more fashion watches, more like Fossil, but a little higher end. And they're in the hundreds of dollars, not thousands of dollars. So I can, and then you have Swatch and Fossil and all kinds of fun stuff. And the difference is that all those companies, including Shinola even, they make thousands and thousands of watches a year. We made 419 watches in 2020. That's it. And we probably will make less than that in 2021 because we're just really honing in on the best or nothing, basically, to use another luxury brand, right? We go and find the coolest pocket watches on planet Earth and tournament wristwatches, and it takes a long time to do it. They're all handmade by one person. I employ 8 people here in Colorado, and I'm really proud of all the American jobs I've created. So, that it's all the whole supply chain and everything. And so, yeah, if somebody wants to buy a less expensive watch, I'm certainly glad to help them find it. If they're on the flip side, Greg, there's people that look at our watches and they say, "Oh, they're only $5,000."
Of course.
I'm used to buying, Pateks and Arnold and Son and all of these brands that a lot of people haven't even heard of that are $50,000 plus, and it's just like, I'm sure there's barbecue pits and things that are all super custom and ultra high end that are tens of thousands of dollars. It's the same thing.
RT Custer joining us here on the show. The company is Vortic Watch Company, and the website is VorticWatches.com, one of the newest sponsors here at the Barbecue Central Show in 2021. So are there any other goals for Vortic this year? Or perhaps a better question is for the folks that are listening either tonight or through podcast over the next handful of weeks, and they're watch folks. They really like the story, and or maybe they have a pocket watch they want to convert, or they want to keep an eye on when the watch of the day comes out. What's the best way to stay in touch and in tune with that so they have an option of taking a look at it and at least buying it before somebody else does?
Absolutely. So we have an email list that you can sign up for it's on the footer. It's all over the website. And you can just put in your name and your email. We send one weekly email with all of our watch of the day options, any new watches that we came out with. We send that every Tuesday afternoon. I send an email. Actually skipped this week because we're totally sold out. I don't even know what to talk about. That's very rare. Usually we have stuff to send. And then if you sign up for that email, I've written a chain of 20 emails that you get every 10 days for 200 days. And it tells you the whole story of our company in written form with pictures and behind the scenes pictures and videos and all kinds of cool stuff. So if you just sign up for email list, you don't even have to go to the website. You can just read the emails and learn all about us. So that's the easiest way. And we do have a bunch of cool stuff coming up. I forgot to mention the convert your watch process. If you have an heirloom pocket watch and you send it to us, it's on the lower side. That process starts at $2,000 because you are providing the rarity to us, and we just have to do our restoration and conversion work. So that's on the cheaper side of what we do. And then every November we come out with one of these, the military edition. November 11th, Veterans Day, we donate 10% of the revenue of that product to a school in Delaware called the Veterans Watchmaker Initiative, and they teach disabled U.S. military vets how to become watchmakers and restore Rolexes and Vortic watches.
RT Custer joining us here on the show from Vortic Watch Company's social media as well at Vortic Watches. So follow them and friend them all over the place. Website, VorticWatches.com. RT, thanks so much for coming on and doing a little extended segment, giving us some history and learning about your company. So happy to have you aboard here for 2021, and we'll look forward to doing it again.
Thank you, sir. I'll see you again soon.
All right, there he is. RT Custer from Vortic Watches. So if you are down for a watch and you want to check them all out, then head on over, sign up for the newsletter, and away you go. And I know, again, as Travis Hale was like, $2,000 for a watch. No, I get it. Can you believe there's some folks out there that wouldn't even consider spending $1,500 on a pellet cooker? They think that's too much. We all have our limits on things. I get it. Let me talk to you quickly about Pits and Spits. Since 1983, Pits and Spits been handcrafting smokers and grills in Houston, Texas. And in that time, establishing itself as a premier brand in the high-quality offset and more recently pellet cooker industry, Pits and Spits setting itself apart by using heavy 7 and 10 gauge steel in every cooker, fully welded construction that you can feel when you use the unit, and 304 stainless roll top lid, and front shelf on every single smoker. Using higher quality materials, Pits and Spits reach and maintain temperatures, allowing you to worry more about the meat than the heat, and providing a fully welded smoker. You don't have to worry about grease or smoke leaking out of the barrel or the grill rattling apart as you move it through the yard. And the 304 stainless makes it heirloom quality that you're going to pass down to your kids. Now, where some companies focus on being a low-cost provider, Pits and Spits focuses on craftsmanship. Quality materials. Are there cheaper ways to make these things? Yes. But they're not going to like their tack welds. They don't believe in cheap stainless and electronics that you can't trust. Having in-house manufacturing gives them complete control of the design and standards. Not something you find brought in from overseas. Their steel suppliers supply materials to be used in some of the harshest environments around, so you know they're going to be able to be used wherever you are, and their controllers are made right here in the States. Having unimpeded transparency into the programming. Bottom line, at Pits and Spits selling on a dealer network, but if you don't have one close to you, call Coy in the shop, 844-650-6250. That's 844-650-6250. Whether you're a backyard grill master looking to cook steaks for the family or a competition team looking to do 50 racks of ribs, Pits and Spits is a product for you. You can check them out online, pitsandspits.com, all spelled out. Or you can see their pits in the wild across social media at their handle @PitsandSpits. We are back to ban a Barbecue Central Show guest Hall of Famer. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the #1 most downloaded barbecue and grilling podcast anywhere. The Barbecue Central Show. Celebrating over 10 years of prolific and unparalleled live fire barbecue and grilling talk. And yes, it's still being done from Cleveland, Ohio. You're listening to the Barbecue Central Show.
This portion of the show being brought to you by Smithfield. Throughout the grilling season, you can check out smithfield.com for tips and tricks from World Championship Pitmasters. You can also head on over to smokinwithsmithfield.com and sign up for the Committed Cooks program. And they are working out the grant program recipients because they are honoring ones from last year. Of course, there was a bunch canceled, and then, of course, the new ones that are coming this year. So we should know in the next couple of weeks when I get Laura Paul on, and we can do a big reveal for the grant program winners. Smithfield.com or Smokin' with Smithfield in the meantime. All right, so the embedded correspondents and I have had great fun rolling out the Barbecue Central Show Guest Hall of Fame and adding 2 classes since its inception in 2018. And while we take the class inductions seriously, we also know, and I also know, that the Show Guest Hall of Fame is a bit tongue-in-cheek. Not from a guest standpoint, mind you. The people in the Guest Hall of Fame are accomplished, professional, some of the most respected people in the live fire industry. My reference to tongue-in-cheek is more from a how many or how my Hall of Fame is viewed from the public's standpoint. For instance, if you're in, it's not necessarily affecting your life one way or the other. If you're not in, it's not affecting your life one way or the other. We're all in on the joke. It's for fun. We all get it. But what if something happens or some news comes to light that might suggest that due to these events or news, a member that is currently in the Guest Hall of Fame should be removed or banned? And I'm here to tell you, for as fun as this whole thing is, The news and or events that are reported or sent to me will be taken under immediate and serious consideration, then thoroughly vetted and checked. And at that point, I will decide if a person should be ultimately removed or banned for a certain period of time, what have you. Which brings us to where we're at tonight. And if I can give you some background on this. First, this hit my radar around October of 2019, but to be honest, I didn't really grab onto it until much later. In fact, it really started to bubble up late November of just this past year while I was recovering from my most recent ear surgery, which we all know too much about. I was watching Netflix because that's what you do when you're laid up and told to do nothing for at least 3 days. And I stumbled across a documentary about Jeffrey Epstein. I didn't know much about him. I recall hearing his name when he was found dead in the tombs at New York City's police department. But I wasn't following really what was going on and really wasn't overly aware of what was happening or what he was into. So needless to say, as I'm watching this documentary, my head is spinning. It's crazy. A man who had come to wealth and prominence, and no one seems to know exactly how he did it. He became a billionaire's financial advisor, and his only one at that, gains access to unprecedented wealth and assets. No one, and I mean no one, seems to know why this billionaire gave Epstein such exclusivity, but he did. Certainly there's rumors, but I'm not here to talk about that tonight. Epstein had homes in New York, Florida, the Virgin Islands, a fleet of private jets, not planes, jets, which is real-ass money, long money. I always talk about if I'm going to get rich and I get a jet, you know I've made it. Like big-time money. They're a lot of money to buy. They're even more money to maintain and operate. By the way, did I mention Jeffrey Epstein? An incredible sex trafficking ring that involved very young girls, fishing them in with cash, taking advantage of at-risk girls and luring them into his world, a world that was not that easy to just walk away from. And I'm not going to get into the whole deal here tonight because Jeffrey Epstein is not in my guest Hall of Fame and not necessarily the main focus tonight, but it's worth the watch. It's called Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich on Netflix if you want more background on that creep and see what he was up to and who he was kind of connected with. And that lands me here. As mentioned a few minutes ago, in 2018, we rolled out the Barbecue Central Show Guest Hall of Fame. The inaugural class included a lot of people, including 20 one-off guests. You might recall initially, the Guest Hall of Fame actually had 3 categories, that being recurring, semi-recurring, and one-off. That has since been changed, where we just usher in a straight 5 people free of category. One of those 20 folks back in 2018 was Adam Perry Lang. Now, you might be asking yourself how Jeffrey Epstein and APL can be used in the same take. Certainly, they can't be connected. Not true. Indeed, there is a connection. For 4 years, from 1999 to 2003, Adam was Jeffrey Epstein's private chef. Without saying it in full detail, there are many interviews that have been done through the years. For instance, and perhaps the most notable one that was done by a friend of the show and new quarterly recurring guest, Daniel Vaughn from Texas Monthly, in November of 2014. And within that article, Adam specifically chronicles his time on a large ranch in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico, as being a seminal time where his love for barbecue came from. He spent long periods of time hanging out with displaced Texas cowboys and learning their barbecue cooking styles. And he also referenced that this was a time where he was working as a private chef, and the person responsible for his employ was never mentioned by name. The person who owned that ranch and was Adam's employer was indeed Jeffrey Epstein. If you recall the end of the year segment I did with Robin Lindars, she did mention that there was a very prominent barbecue person who was on flight manifests of Jeffrey Epstein. She went on to say this person was someone many of us in the barbecue world knew. Now, at that moment, I knew exactly who she was talking about. I tried to get her to name him out loud, but she wouldn't do it. However, she did say that it was pretty easy to go onto the Googles, put in a little amount of effort, and see who she was talking about. That part of Robin's interview brought me back to a conversation I had with someone else who had previously mentioned a similar story. So the more I look into this, and the more conversation I have with other journalists who cover this topic, I find a bit of a trend. And look, you can go online, track Adam's career path. It shows some partnerships and business collaborations with people who brought a bit of controversy along with them. And look, I can also imagine that it had to be a bit of an internal struggle on Adam's part, right? You are in business with someone who might provide you with great professional opportunities and access, but they might not align with your own morals, scruples. And what do you do when you're confronted with that? Of course, no bigger example of that than when he was a private chef for Jeffrey Epstein from 1999 to 2003. And look, I do think it's incredibly important right here for me to preface what I'm about to say by saying this. I do not think that Adam took part in anything illegal at the Epstein properties. I don't think he did anything criminal at these properties. There have been no documentation in any of the research and conversations I have done that have hinted that he was involved in anything criminal. However, after doing the research, after having conversations I've had with multiple sources and other reporters who have done reporting on this subject, and having asked multiple times for interviews from Adam himself to come on this show and talk about it with no reply back at this point, taking everything into account, that I have, at this point, decided to suspend Adam from the Barbecue Central Show Guest Hall of Fame. This is not something that I'm doing for a publicity stunt. It's not a ploy to get people talking about the show and hope for more subscribers. I am not a QAnon subscriber or anything like that. I do not take joy in doing this. It's something I would actually rather not do. In fact, it would be much easier for me to not say anything or do anything at all. It's always easier to just not say anything and move along because it makes you feel weird inside. It causes you to have to rethink what you think about somebody or have a fondness for. I get all that. But I keep coming back to this scenario. And I'm a father of three daughters who have expressed to me individually and as a group at various occasions their real fears of being snatched off the street one day and being sent into sex trafficking, never to be seen and heard from again. So after reading the extremely detailed reports from Virginia Roberts, one of Jeffrey Epstein's victims, the reference of her interactions with Adam specifically, and seeing her account as well as many others in the Netflix documentary, and then listening to the Broken Seeking Justice podcast, there's no way that I can make it work in my head that Adam didn't see anything wrong or illegal going on during his 4 years of Epstein's private chef. Do any of you believe that? That there was no way he can produce or corroborate names of people that were on Epstein's Island or at a ranch in New Mexico or at the mansion in Florida, the New York City mansion, on the private jet rides that he took part of between 2000 and 2001. He didn't see one weird thing. There are accounts too detailed, and his responsibilities as a private chef for Epstein reveal that not only was he not sequestered in some kind of a kitchen bunker, that he was serving food to these girls at various properties, as well as being in the middle of taking and serving food to the guests, while also having to memorize all the important people's names and what their food requirements were. And according to many accounts, all the girls on the property were required to remain nude, kept on strict diets that were prepared by Adam. How you can be around naked girls, perhaps even one in that kind of setting, and not think something weird is going on, that's a little troubling. I can't wrap my head around that. Not seeing anything wrong or weird or depraved. That's something that I am not able to reconcile in my head. And yes, I know you can go through the articles. You can listen to the end of that Broken Seeking Justice podcast. And Adam has volunteered through his lawyers his help in bringing justice to these victims. But then he releases a statement that says, and I'm paraphrasing here, while he feels bad for the victims and he's willing to do whatever he can to help, he quickly disqualifies that by releasing statements that say that he saw nothing illegal, nothing depraved, or anything like that. So I had reached out to Tara Palmieri, who was the host of the Broken Seeking Justice podcast, and specifically asked her if she thought that Adam was being disingenuous with his statement of wanting to help and find more information for these victims. And her reply back to me was, and I quote, "Yes, totally disingenuous." And I thought I made that very clear at the end of the podcast. So I understand that Epstein might have wielded great power while he was alive, and that there were very powerful people in his circle, to include royalty, current and former presidents of the United States, high-level politicians, business people that frequent those residents. Some of the people are still being arrested as recently as December of last year. So perhaps laying silence done out of the fact that he is trying to protect the well-being of himself and his family. And I'm speculating on this particular instance. Perhaps his current business partners have said, hey, if anybody reaches out to you about this stuff, clam up. Don't even talk about it. So the naming of names and the help for these victims, I would hope, would be supplied by Adam and by anyone else, by the way, that knows what's going on during those times. And I know, Rempy, easy for you to be such a tough guy tonight, sitting behind the camera, talking to a microphone, banning Adam from your guest Hall of Fame. How do you know you'd be so macho if you were in the same position? Fair point. I would like to think that my ethics and morals and scruples, which I have shown that I am not the kind of person that would put money or status or personal gain, something like that, ahead of what's right. So for those reasons, at this point, I'm banning Adam from the Guest Hall of Fame. Perhaps one day that changes. But at this point, it is a ban until further notice. Happy to take your email reaction on this topic through the week. You can email me, Greg, at thebbqcentralshow.com. If you're interested, I also have reference links if you would like to check some stuff out as well and listen to some podcasts. I'll put those into the show notes as well this evening. All right. I think that brings us to the end of this evening. Let me wipe all this stuff out and we'll go. All the way back out. In the first hour, we had Meathead from AmazingRibs.com. We talked about his new rubs that are coming out, got some update there. And we talked about some new cookers that are coming out. Weber has bought a new smart oven that is in charge of making their software. Second hour, we talked with Vortic Watch co-founder R.T. Custer, VorticWatches.com. Follow them on social at Vortic Watches. Big show planned for you next week, of course. Stephen Reichlin is in for his first appearance of 2021. We have B&B Ed Riley coming in. He's going to tell you something that's going to completely blow your mind as it relates to grills and cookers. And then we will talk with the Spark Grills. The whole show is racked up, ready to roll. September 11th, 2001. I will never forget. Until next Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, this is your program host and proud U.S. American, Greg Rempe. Good night now.